All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Your World, and today it's all about self-care and self-compassion, which is something that, again, I find very, very interesting because most of the time we don't do that to ourselves. We just show compassion to others, but then again, we self-criticize and we need to show ourselves some bit of love, all right? And Aleema NoorMohamed, who is a mindfulness teacher, of course, she's helping us understand then how do we practice this, okay? And Aleema, very quickly, can we just go through then the different elements of self-compassion?
So some of the components of self-compassion that we have to remember is it's about bringing the awareness to the situation. Mm-hmm. When we become mindful, and this normally applies when we feel a lot of pain. Mm-hmm. So we have to become very mindful of our pain. Mm-hmm. And once we become mindful of our pain, mindful means we become very aware of that pain. Mm-hmm. We acknowledge that we are suffering. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, the difference between self-pity. We're not wallowing in it. We're acknowledging, we're accepting, okay, I'm feeling this pain now. Mm-hmm. And once we acknowledge, we can take a more objective approach to the situation. So an example would be, for example, let's say if somebody is experiencing pain, you care for that person who's experiencing, what would you do? What kind of comforting situation would you share with them? What kind of words would you use? Language is very important when it comes to self-compassion. Mm-hmm. And then one of the questions you ask yourself is, what do I need right now? I am suffering right now. What is it do I need? And in that, and in answering that, bring in an aspect of kindness. There's no longer, kindness in this world doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. That's because we don't know how to be kind to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Once we can bring that aspect, kindness to ourselves, then we can share that to others. Mm-hmm. So self-compassion is becoming aware and mindful of who you are, knowing that you are connected to other human beings who are also suffering, mm-hmm. and bringing in this aspect of kindness. Mm-hmm. That, in a nutshell, summarizes self-compassion, mm-hmm. which is now linked to self-care when you're looking after yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what about if you're the one who brought about the suffering on yourself? Okay, because this it can be a very difficult place to just show your self-compassion because, you know, of course, we blame ourselves. We're the reasons why this is happening to us. So what if then you're the one who brought about, you know, the suffering to yourself? Is it possible to still show yourself compassion?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. This connection is terrible today.
All right, so the question is it possible? Can you hear me now?
Is it possible? I heard, is it possible?
Yes. So is it possible then for you to show compassion to yourself, especially if you're the one who brought yourself the suffering? Like you are somewhat the cause of the sin. Is it possible to still show yourself compassion?
So if I'm not mistaken, yes, is it possible to show compassion to yourself?
Yes. If you've brought your suffering.
One of the things that I would say is, mm-hmm. When you're doing self-compassion, think of the yin and the yang. So what your masculine and your feminine aspect of what it is, of who you are. Mm-hmm. When you think about the yin aspect, you're being with yourself in a caring way. And that means, what are some of the things that are comfortable for me? What are some of the things that would support my emotional needs? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then you also ask yourself, what is going to help me to feel physically calm? Is it, you know, maybe is it a sweater? Is it a favorite sweater? Is it holding a pillow? Another thing that you would ask yourself is the validation question, understanding what we're going through, mm-hmm. and saying it in a much kinder way. Mm-hmm. I'm going through a breakup instead of, you know, saying that, what is wrong with me? Why is it that I'm going through this? Mm-hmm. You approach it in a more kinder way. You say, you know what? A lot of people go through breakups. It's mm-hmm. okay. It just wasn't meant to work out. It's literally changing that perspective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the yin aspect of showing yourself the self-compassion. Mm-hmm. Now the yang aspect is acting out in the world, which means, how can I protect myself from mm-hmm. this? You mm-hmm. want to feel safe from harm. So one of the things we can do is set boundaries. One of the things we can do is say no to whatever doesn't feel right. We get that feeling that this doesn't feel right, and yet we allow, we give our power away to people. So setting boundaries is very important. Another thing you can ask yourself is, what is it that I need right now? When you recognize this need, accept that you deserve this need, and then go get it. This is what it is. It's about really accepting that I'm suffering right now, and I'm going to look after myself first. And then at the end of it, you can also motivate yourself. Just the way a coach would motivate somebody that they're training, motivate yourself with kindness, with understanding and support. These are the different ways you can bring self-compassion to you, and that is already a step to looking after yourself.
Okay. Then can this sometimes lead to a point where someone becomes too over-compassionate? Is there a word like that, where someone becomes too self-compassionate that, again, removes the situation from, like somewhat you're not in touch with what has happened because you're too compassionate? Is that a thing?
There's nothing like too compassionate.
Yeah.
Look, life will be hard, right?
Yeah.
Pain is inevitable. As a lovely saying by the Buddha, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. There'll always be tragedies. Look at what's happening around the world right now. There's always going to be loss. There's always going to be worry, heartbreak, all sorts of hardships. What we need to remember is pain happens in the moment.
Yeah.
Now, suffering is the added pain after the initial one. Suffering is the pain that we hold on to. We get frustrated because things are not the way they should be. And that is what we want to we want to break away from. And the way to break away from that is to practice mindfulness, which is the present moment awareness, and to practice self-compassion, because the combination of the two practices allows us to meet difficult experiences without any resistance. We tend to want to resist anything that's happening to us. And what you resist persists. Whatever it is that if people try to wonder why do things constantly happening to me, it's because we're always resisting it. So what self-compassion does is think of it as a big hug that comes to you in a very distressing situation. We all love hugs. So that big hug is like an acceptance of the situation. And once we can just fall, and it's like falling into this hug. When we do this, that pain eventually goes away. Nothing is permanent in this world. Everything is temporary. When we accept the reality that, first of all, we as human beings are not perfect, mistakes will happen, then there will be struggles. And if we accept and know that we are not alone, then this contributes to the softening of our hearts. And once our heart softens, it's okay. I think we do need a lot of compassion in this world, especially with the way it's going right now. So there's no such thing as too much.
Too compassionate. Because again, I was doing some reading and someone was saying, yeah, sometimes it's very easy for you to be too compassionate that you somewhat are not in touch with the reality. And the reality is that there is a bit of suffering, is you're hurting and you're going through stuff, right? But what about then a case of being too compassionate? Because, okay, fine, you said there's nothing like being too compassionate, right? But then again, because someone would be like, yes, what about those instances where we're constantly in denial? Like, yes, compassionate, but then again, I'm still in denial of what is happening around me, right? Then what happens there before you get to that point of acceptance?
Sorry, I'm trying to see if I could, again, you were breaking off in the middle of the sentence.
Okay, so my question, can you hear me now? My question...
could you just repeat the last question?
Yes, so the question is about denial and acceptance, because of course when something happens, we usually get into denial first before getting to acceptance, right? So then how can you practice compassionate or being compassionate, over the situation when you're still in that phase of denial?
How can you practice compassion when you're still in that phase of denial? That's actually a very good question. One of the things that we would do when you are in this denial is it's to realize that this is a moment of suffering.
Okay.
When you're in denial, it's because you don't realize that, or rather you're thinking that this is only happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging that this is a moment of suffering is key. This whole acknowledgement moment is key.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in denial, it's again, you're resisting what is actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
The more you are in denial, the more it's going to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say is stop everything you're doing.
Okay.
And just sit with it, with whatever it is that's happening to you. Just notice what is happening to you emotionally in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't stop and stay here in this moment, we are attaching, we're telling ourselves a story over and over and over again with whatever it is that has caused us this pain.
Mm-hmm.
We've attached to it and we don't want to accept that this is actually happening to us. And so we're in constant denial. When we stop doing that and you just simply notice, you don't even have to do anything, you simply notice, let go of any judgment, and then you can say, you know what, this is actually very painful. This hurts. The moment you acknowledge that this hurts, that is literally, that can step you out of your denial. Because when you're denying something, this shouldn't happen to me. But now you're changing that whole language and you're saying, this has happened to me, this hurts. The next step is to understand that this is a part of life. Suffering is a part of life. It's something that we have in common with people around the world, and that all people go through these different kind of experiences. This is what we have common with the rest of the world. And at this point, you can say, other people go through this. I'm not alone. I'm not struggling alone. And then after that is when you start to bring kindness. And one of the ways to bring kindness to yourself is to even just take your own hands and put them on your heart. And you feel the warmth of your hands, because as soon as you do that, you feel the warmth of your hands on the heart, and that becomes a gentle touch to yourself. And at this point, you can even say, may I be kind to myself? When you express that, that's a form of self-kindness.
Okay.
That can break you out of the denial. That resistance that we feel when we're in denial, kindness can break that. And the moment you do that, you can now even continue and say, I need the self-compassion. Let me give myself the compassion that I need. Let me learn, may I accept myself the way I am. May I forgive myself. These are all words that we can use to break away from that mindset of denial. But the first thing is to accept. We have to accept. And the longer we deny, the longer we're going to stay in this rut. And sometimes we might even need to actually go and see a professional, go seek professional help and help them get you out of this denial. So I hope that does answer the question.
Yeah, okay. Is the intensity of the hurt or the suffering a factor then when it comes to self-compassionate? Because sometimes someone might be too angry to even just be rational, to just sit back and say, it has happened and it's okay, let me be kinder to myself. So does the intensity matter?
I didn't hear the last question.
All right. The question is the intensity of the hurt or the suffering. Does it matter when it comes to practicing self-compassion?
Does the intensity matter? Is that what you meant?
Yes.
You have to believe in yourself. I think that the first step is when you accept it, especially if you've never done it before. It doesn't have to be so intense. If you've never done it before, the first step is accepting it. And if the acceptance just means acknowledging, I'm suffering this way today, I'm hurting, and then telling yourself that's okay, that will work. That's your first step. So all these techniques, all these, the power of touch and holding yourself and all that, that's all a part of the deeper exercise. But the first thing to do is literally to just, you pause. Just pause and take a breath and notice what you feel. That's really all you need to do. If you can't go further than that, then start with that.
Okay. All right. And
every time you acknowledge, you're creating, you're creating more and more, you're creating more and more warmth in your heart. You're creating more and more space in your heart.
Okay. But what about someone who has never practiced mindfulness, don't understand how then it's possible for you to show compassionate to yourself? What are some of the steps? Like, how do you get to that point of being mindful and also practicing self-compassion?
So if you've never practiced mindfulness, now for everybody who's watching this, the first thing you do is literally, even if you have to write down these words and stick them somewhere that you're going to see every day, write down the words stop. S is for literally stop, which will, the moment you see it, just stop. Whatever it is that you're doing, stop. If it's going to get a coffee, just stop. If it's going into the next meeting, stop. If it's about, if you're going to go pick up your child, just stop. After you stop, the T in stop stands for take a breath. Breathing is it's something that is available to every single person on this planet. If you're alive, you're breathing. When you acknowledge that breath and you take a deep breath, that automatically grounds you. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system. The part of you that, that relaxes you. That deep breath grounds you. It relaxes you. And the moment you do that, you're creating a space. You're creating a space between whatever it is you are going to and the thoughts that were going to be attached to it. And in that space, you can now observe everything that's going on around you. So taking one deep breath, grounding yourself, and then being able to just observe your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and acknowledging that. And then proceeding. Now, I make it sound very easy, but it's not. You have to have your reminders. If that means, you have to take action. You can have an intention, but you also have to have the attitude to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. When you take on that attitude, you will start to take action. And one of the actions is setting reminders. To start the practice, because you're not used to it, you've never done it before, take action, put yourself reminders, get an accountability partner, do this with somebody you know, and do it together. Put it in between your days, in between, schedule it in. If it has to be, if you have to schedule it in like a meeting, then schedule it in. The whole idea is to get you started. Once you start that, you will start to actually realize that 1 minute, it doesn't even have to be 10 minutes, that 1 minute is all you need to slow down and bring in that awareness. The more you do it throughout the day, the more awareness you're bringing into your life. Now suddenly you start to see, oh, I can do this for a little bit longer. And then your practice will deepen. It's not even about doing it at home. This is about doing it just in the middle of your day. Maybe you're on a phone call. Whilst you're waiting for the other person to pick up the line, you're breathing and observing. And then you answer, the person says hello, and then you proceed. So it's a step-by-step process, but it works.
Okay. Doesn't it feel weird that the first time someone tries to to actually do this, it's like, what am I doing exactly?
Sorry?
Does it feel weird, the first time once? Because again, this person is not used to being mindful, right? And then so the first time someone gets to that point of, let's try and do this. Of course, sometimes it feels weird that one might actually stop and not continue to practice mindfulness, right?
Sorry,
Aleema, can you hear me?
I completely lost you.
Okay.
No.
So then again, when it comes to self-compassion, right, what is it not? Because I might think that I am doing things that are good for me, but really that is not being compassionate.
What is it not?
Yes.
Okay. That's a very good question. It's definitely not self-pity, as we talked about it earlier. And it's definitely, it's definitely not selfish. I think that's also another thing to really remember. It is not selfish to show your self-compassion. A lot of people will think, well, you know, if I do too much of this, then people will think I'm full of myself. No, self-compassion is literally, I mean, ask yourself the one question: how would you how would you treat somebody that you love? How would you treat a loved one? With a lot of love, with a lot of care. How would you treat a loved one when they are upset? With a lot of care. You would give them an ear to listen to. So here's my question is, why is it that we can't treat ourselves the same way? When we show ourselves that self-care, then we can say, okay, you know what? I love myself, so I can expect you to love me. If I don't love myself, how can I expect somebody else to love me? That is why it is not selfish. It has nothing to do with self-pity. It is literally about looking after ourselves with a lot of kindness and acknowledging that it's okay to suffer.
So then at what point do you do this? Because again, like we said earlier on about life, it's like go, go, go. Sometimes you don't take time to just relax and stop. So at what point then do you practice self-compassion?
At what point do you practice self-compassion? So to start the practice, don't wait until you suffer. Okay? You begin at any time of the day. So when you're doing that practice that I shared earlier, the STOP, the stop practice, at that point, if you're putting it in the middle of the day, great. If you're putting it in the beginning, do what works for you. I will say, do what works for you. When you're slowing down, allow yourself that kindness. Look around, don't judge anything, don't judge yourself, and just say, you know what, I'm gonna have a good day today. Step by step. The more you practice, the more you're gonna get deeper into it. The more you get deeper into it, you're gonna eventually decide, I want to do this for longer periods of time. So that's how you begin. Don't wait until you get hit by pain and then you don't know what to do, because as you start your practice now, for example, when you do hit an obstacle, when you do reach a point where something is happening to you, at that point you already have these tools, this awareness and this realization that this has happened to me. I know what to do now. I can step back, just take a break, and show myself some kindness because I already know what to do. So start now. And the first step is to just slow down and take a breath.
Okay, slow down, take a breath. All right, like you said earlier on, sounds so easy, but then again, of course, it takes a bit of time and practice to get there. So fine, so then the next question is, after self-compassion, then what next? Because the situation is there, right? You're experiencing it. What next? Did you get that? What next after self-compassion?
We have to be very compassionate about the situation and technology.
Okay, yeah. But then again, so the question is, what next? Fine, I'm showing myself some bit of compassion, right? This is what is happening, acceptance and all those things. What next?
What next? Next is to literally, once you acknowledge, you get that clarity of what next. It all depends on, each situation is going to be different. For you, when we suffer and we don't acknowledge it, we stay in that mode of suffering. We are unable to make decisions. We are unable to leave situations that don't serve us. We're unable to care for others because we haven't acknowledged it. We haven't accepted it. Once you've brought that into your life, it will give you the clarity to make the next decision. It will give you the strength to say, you know what, this isn't serving me anymore. I need to go, maybe I need to go get some help, professional help. Maybe I need to just do something about the situation. It's about taking your power back and then making that choice. And sometimes we do need help along the way to nudge us. So get a coach, get a therapist, get a friend, talk to them and tell them, okay, you know what? I've acknowledged that this is happening to me. I know I need to do this. I just don't know how. So go out and seek for help if you need to. But the moment you accept, acknowledge, and show yourself and realize that, you know what? This is not happening to me. At that point, in your own mind, clarity starts to seep in. And the moment clarity starts to seep in, you start to see, you know what? I can do something about that situation. You start to see things objectively, and then you're able to take the next step.
Okay. All right. And as we finish this, Aleema, because we literally have like 45 seconds to go before we wind up the conversation, and especially the impact that it has on other people. Once you're able to show compassion on yourself, what impact does this have on other people? Very briefly. What impact does it have to other people? And I'll take that as your parting shot.
What impact does it have to other people?
Yes, and I'll take that as your parting shot. Yeah.
So when you start to look after you and you bring that kindness in here, automatically how you perceive the outside world, that changes.
Okay.
So when you are in this place of constant, why is this happening to me? Constant denial, everything around you, you'll feel like the world is against you. And your attitude to everybody around you will be the same. So if I'm suffering, everybody, like nobody, my attitude will be like, I don't really care. I'm in pain, so I'm not even aware of the pain that I'm inflicting on the people around me. When I acknowledge that I'm in pain and I decide that, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. And I say, I'm okay. It's okay that I'm suffering. Just that mental change in attitude also seeps out into the people around you, because now you've realized I am in pain, and your communication probably gets better. Instead of snapping at a partner or whoever is around you, you will actually tell them, you know, this is hurting me. I'm actually in a lot of pain right now. I need some space. Or I'm in a lot of pain right now, you know, help me. So you don't want to inflict that pain that you're going through because you're aware that this is painful. You automatically do not want to inflict that on the people around you. So that's why if you start here, then around you, you start to see the world in a different way. What you perceive, you project. Whatever it is that you are seeing, what you're feeling, you will project it outside.
To other people.
And then the people you're talking to are almost like a mirror to you. So if you are perceiving things, the world being against you, you will see the world being against you, because that's just how you're seeing things. If you're seeing if you're coming from a place of compassion, you will see compassion coming back to you.
Okay. All right, Aleema, thank you very much. On that note, we have to take a break. And this is where we end this conversation on self-compassion. Thank you very much, Aleema NoorMohamed, who is a mindfulness teacher, just helping us understand why it is important for us to show ourselves compassion the same way we show to other people, and of course the impact that it has even in our day-to-day interactions and relationships. Thank you very much, Aleema. And on that note, let's take a break. And of course, when we come back, we also want to discuss about the impact of climate change, and especially amongst women and girls and their role in the same. You do not want to miss that conversation. Stay with us. This is Your World.